like this? Smoking.
Catastrophic day in Sodor's history started off like any other. The engines who worked on that railway were very busy. Trains were running smoothly and everything was running right on time. Recently, Sir Topham Hatt had funded the construction of a nuclear power plant in order to attract more visitors to the island. The engines that worked on Sodor had different opinions about it. Some engines were for the new power plant, saying it would boost up ratings and modernize Sodor, while other engines were against this power plant, saying it could be too dangerous and could lead to a catastrophic event if not careful. James the Red Engine, who was at Wellsworth Station waiting to collect Edward's passengers, was against the idea and complained endlessly about it. At last, Edward arrived. "Hello, James. How are you?" "How am I? Oh, I'll tell you how I am. I still don't understand why a nuclear power plant is so important to Sir Topham Hatt." "I understand what you mean, James. Some people and engines are for the idea while others are against it." "Well, what are your opinions on it?" "Me? I'm neutral about it, to be honest with you. Though saying that, I do have my suspicions. You know what I've noticed, Edward? I've noticed with everything Sir Topham Hatt does is money, money, money nowadays. I mean, money this, money that. Sir Topham Hatt's just like, oh, I'm Sir Topham Hatt. I'm going to spend billions of quid on building a nuclear power plant. I'm not against this power plant because I think it's dangerous. I'm against this power plant because I think it's pointless. I mean, Sodor is the #1 tourist attraction in the world. What do we need a power plant for?" Then the conductor blew his whistle and raised his green flag, meaning it was time for James to leave. But as James was about to leave, there was a loud explosion, followed by a loud siren. Right away, the two engines knew what that meant. "Get out of here fast! The nuclear plant has exploded!" Well, you didn't have to tell Edward and James twice. When all the passengers were on board, the two engines raced away as fast as they could. Edward was racing at speeds he had never gone before. Meanwhile, James was terrified and he kept pace with the old engine. The two engines raced past Donald, who was going the other way with a good strain. Then a huge shockwave hit the two engines. The shockwave broke the windows of the coaches. The two terrified engines didn't stop until they got to Knapford Station. When they got to Knapford Station, the passengers quickly took cover inside the station. James was still shaking from the explosion. So was Edward. "Edward, what the hell happened?" "The power plant exploded. I had a bad feeling this would happen." "But Edward, how long do we have to stay here?" "Well, we can't stay here for long. It's only a matter of time before the radiation spreads. We need to get off the island and onto the mainland immediately." When all the passengers got on board, James and Edward quickly puffed away to the mainland. On the way, Edward had to stop for water. But James was in such a big rush to get off the island. "To hell with this! I'm getting out of here!" And James raced past Edward as fast as he could. But there was trouble ahead. As James hurried along, he ended up on the wrong track. But by the time James realized this, it was too late. After he got his drink, Edward hurried along. He managed to make it to Vickerstown, which was the last station on Sodor before you hit the mainland. Edward and his crew stopped at a shunting yard to rest. He managed to make it to Vickerstown, which was the last station on Sodor before you hit the mainland. Edward and his crew stopped at a shunting yard to rest. Then they heard Thomas's whistle. Edward wanted to help Thomas, but by the sound of his whistle, it was already too late. Then out of nowhere, Percy raced past Edward, and he was pulling Annie and Clarabelle. Edward watched in horror as Percy raced past. Percy was racing for his life, and he had made a promise to Thomas earlier to take care of Annie and Clarabelle. Well, that was exactly what the little green tank engine was going to do. As Percy hurried along, he saw Oliver, who was already mutated, chasing after him. "Driver, we need to go faster!" The driver and fireman did everything they could, Oliver was quickly gaining on them. Then Percy was diverted onto a set of buffers. His driver and fireman applied the brakes, but it was too late. Percy was derailed, and Oliver soon caught up with him. And to make matters worse, a mutated Gordon thundered by. Meanwhile, Bulko was coming into Sodor from the mainland with a goods train. He was on his way to Brendam Docks, but was unaware of the situation and ended up in a contaminated area. When Bulko arrived at the docks, he was snuck up on by Bill and Ben. Except, of course, they weren't Bill and Ben. Meanwhile, Edward was still on the run. He was trying to get as far away from Sodor as possible. Edward stopped at a nearby shed to rest. Spencer was also there. "Hello, Edward. Is something wrong?" Edward told Spencer about the explosion and everything that happened. Spencer was horrified when he heard this. He told Edward that he could stay on the mainland until Sodor was back to normal. As the days turned into months, the situation only got worse. What started off as a Sudrian crisis became a national disaster. There would soon be reports that the mutations were actually contagious, and that engines can get the mutation just by being near a mutant. As a result, it spread to the entire United Kingdom, even Ireland. Then the mutation spread to the rest of Europe, Africa, Asia, and even Australia. And finally, it hit the Americas. And soon, the entire world was affected by mutant engines. Things were not going well at all for Old Man Edward. Today marked the 1-year anniversary of the tragic event, and the entire world is in the middle of an apocalypse. Edward was one of the remaining unaffected engines and was struggling to stay alive. He had been hiding in an old abandoned shed that nobody else knew about. So this is what the world has come to? This is how my life ends? In all my 125 years of living, I have never seen anything like this. The only friend Edward had was his driver.
And his fireman.
I agree, old boy, but I'm afraid there's nothing we can do about it. And ever since your fireman died from radiation poisoning, I had to do his work as well as my own.
But as long as we stay together, we'll get through this. Then the
two
three.
heard a puffing noise. Driver, what was that? I don't know, but I think we better hide in case it's one of them. Edward hid in the shed and did not dare make a puffing noise. Then they heard a familiar, unaffected whistle. Douglas, is that you? Aye, yes it is. Who's there? It's me, Edward from Sodor. He was happy to see another unaffected engine. Well, I'll be big for the Loch Ness Monster. Edward, it's so great to see you. How are you doing, Douglas? It's been a very long time. Ugh, I've been better. Ever since I lost Dunny, I haven't been the same engine. I know how you feel. I lost all my friends, too. I swear, that fat tyrant will pay for what he did to my brother. Now, Douglas, don't start putting the blame on Sir Topham Hatt. He did not anticipate any of that to happen. A freak accident was all it was. I'm sorry that I'm angry, Edward, but can you really blame me? Unfortunately, no, I cannot. But if we're gonna get through this, we need to stay together. Aye, 'tis my intention. Edward and Douglas spent the next 2 days looking for any more survivors. It wasn't long before the two engines heard a puffing noise. Then they heard a deformed whistle. Oh, no, it's one of them. Edward, we need to get out of here. Wait a minute, I know that whistle from anywhere. And sure enough, in the distance was a mutated Thomas. And he just stared right at the two engines. That is one ugly creature. That ugly creature is our friend. Then Edward turned towards the mutated Thomas. Thomas, do you remember us? Thomas didn't say anything, but as if to answer him, he made a sad face. Then he started groaning. It was as if Thomas was trying to say something, But he couldn't. Edward felt really sad for Thomas. You didn't deserve this, buddy. I really wish there was something I could do to help you. Don't you see, Edward? Thomas is a gunner. There is nothing we can do. Unless somebody comes along and makes some kind of antidote, there's really nothing we can do. Wait a minute. Antidote. That's it. What are you on about, laddie? All we need to do is come up with some type of antidote. The problem is, what's a counter for radiation? Well, if there is a counter for radiation, how are we supposed to get it to the entire world? Then Thomas opened his mouth again, as if to speak. Water, he managed to blurt out before going silent again. Water? But you're an abomination. What do you need water for? I think he's thirsty. Here, you can have some of mine. Edward, are you mad? What if more of those things show up? I'm only giving him enough to quench his thirst. Edward gave the mutated Thomas some of his water. Thomas felt a little better after the drink, but was still very sick. He then said, "Thank you," before going silent again. The water seems to improve Thomas's speech. This gave Edward an idea. What if water is the key to defeating this? Now, Edward, you really don't think water would work? Pure, clean water might. And soap. Lots and lots of soap. Edward, there are thousands, maybe even millions of engines in the world. How are we supposed to get it to all of them? If we mix some of the water with cleaning supplies, we might be able to kill off the radiation. Besides, our friends need our help more than anything. Thomas blinked as if to agree with Edward. Edward went off to get some water. He was determined to save his friend. Douglas, on the other hand, was a bit skeptical about it, but if Edward had a plan, that was good enough for him. Douglas was in charge of getting the soap. He was very vigilant and kept a watchful eye for any mutants. When the two engines returned, they got to work. But as they were about to give Thomas the water, they heard a voice. "Stop!
Don't pour the water on him!
The two engines looked to where the voice was coming from and were shocked to see Henry rushing towards them with a milk tanker. Water only makes the mutation worse. If you want the mutation to go away, milk is your best friend. Henry, you're alive. But how is this possible? It's a long story, but right now we need to give Thomas that milk, and fast. And without hesitation, the three engines got to work. They poured the milk inside the mutant Thomas's tank, and then put the soap in. At first, nothing happened. Then Thomas spoke in a full sentence. "Oh, hey Edward, Henry, Douglas, what are you three doing here?" "Bust my buffers!" "I don't believe it. It's actually working." Soon Thomas's face was slowly going back to normal. "Guys, why are we on the mainland?" "Henry, how did you know milk would do the trick?"
When I got infected by the mutated Gordon, my driver was having a glass of milk. The sound of Gordon's whistle scared my driver and he accidentally spilled milk in my smoke box. And the milk actually prevented me from becoming one of them.
Right. We need to milk as many cows as possible. Unaffected cows, that is. But where are we going to find unaffected cows? The radiation is worldwide.
Sir Topham Hatt will know what to do. He's in a station not far from here.
And the four engines raced to Sir Topham Hatt. When they got to the station, they were looking for Sir Topham Hatt.
Sir, it's me, Henry, and look who I brought with me."
Sir Topham Hatt walked out of the station and was surprised to see them. "Edward, Thomas, Douglas, it's so great to see you three." "Sir, we may have figured out a way to get rid of this radiation once and for all. Milk and soap are the key to stopping this." "Milk? But how are we going to get enough cows to cure all the engines?"
"I'm sure goat milk will work too."
"Then it's settled. We need as many cows and goats as we possibly can. Thomas, you're in charge of the goats, and Henry, you're in charge of the cows."
"You got it, Edward."
"I'm on it, Edward." And Douglas, you're with me on mutant duty. Right, let's do this. While Thomas and Henry went to get the cows and the goats and the soap, Edward and Douglas stayed behind to watch for any mutants. Things seemed to go well at first. Then they heard a deformed whistle, and a mutated Gordon was thundering towards them. Edward, we need to get out of here. Now hold on, Douglas. Gordon, do you remember us? Gordon didn't say anything. He just kept puffing towards the two engines. Gordon was followed by a mutant James and a mutant Percy. The three engines surrounded Edward and Douglas and were about to infect them, when Thomas and Henry arrived in the nick of time and sprayed them with the milk and the soap. The formula worked and the three engines went back to normal. The indignity? Edward, what the hell happened? This was all my fault. Yeah, no kidding, fatty. I lost my brother because of you. Douglas! No, Edward. Douglas is right. If I hadn't made that nuclear power plant, none of this would have ever happened. I don't know if I forgive you or not, sir. I feel as if you only did this for the money. I built the power plant because I thought it would attract that it would make us look modern. I forgive you, sir. I know you were just trying to do the right thing. I agree with Edward. That catastrophic event was out of Sir Topham Hatt's control. That could have happened to anybody.
Guys, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but there are more mutants coming.
And sure enough, more mutants were rushing towards them, including a mutant duck, a mutant Donald, Oliver, Bobo, Bill, Ben, and even Diesel 10. Soon there was a full-fledged army of mutant engines. Fire at will, Sir Topham Hatt shouted. And without hesitation, the engines began to shoot milk and soap at the mutants. One by one, the engines slowly changed back to normal, and there was enough milk to cure them all. Yes, we did it! All right, hooray for milk and soap! And all the engines whistled in agreement. The first thing I'm doing when we head back to Sodor is making a vaccination site for sick engines. And when they returned to Sodor, that's what Sir Topham Hatt did. The rest of the world soon heard about Sodor's breakthrough, and they followed suit. And soon Earth was mutant-free, and life on Sodor
was back to normal. Guys, this is not the end. This is the full movie. Not kidding. That's the top and fatty for helping me make this video. First, we're gonna see.
Once he filled up with coal and water,
Scarlowe
raced
first.
away as fast as he could. He had to get away from the mutants so he wouldn't get mutated himself.
We're gonna wait until 20
When he was
minutes
out
and
of
then we'll
sight,
get
Scarlowe stopped to rest.
to the
He
16.
was now all alone. He was silent for a moment before saying, I don't know what to do. I literally don't know what to do right now. I've lost everything. My home, my friends, my entire life. For the rest of the day, Scarlowe wandered around looking for other engines. Soon it was getting dark, and Scarlowe needed to find a place to rest. He managed to find a shed with a water tower and a coal hopper, and he was pretty much set for a little while. I hope this'll all end soon, Scarlowe said sadly before falling asleep. But as the days turned into months, it only got worse. 1 year later, Scarlowe is still traveling around the railway looking for any surviving engines. But so far, no luck. Scarlowe continued searching when he heard a deformed whistle. It was Peter Sam, and he was followed by...
Now
On the northern part of the island of Sodor, there are mountains. And within those mountains are little engines. These engines work on a railway called the Scarlowe Railway. They're much smaller than their standard gauge counterparts, but are just as useful. The day started off like any other. The engines were just waking up to begin work for the day. Good morning, everyone. Isn't it a lovely day? It sure is, Scarloey. Nothing can ruin this day. Ugh, it's another rotten day if you ask me. Of course, maybe except for Duncan. What are you on about this time, Duncan? That new power plant that's at Topham Hatt built is pretty useless if you ask me. I agree with Duncan. All it's doing is taking up space. Then Rusty pulled in. I don't think having a power plant is that bad, Duncan. Ugh, you're a smelly diesel. What do you know? More than you think, bossy buffers. Don't mind him, Rusty. Duncan's just having a bad day. And so is Sir Handel. What's with all the complaining? Said a voice. It was Duke. He was trying to take a nap, but he couldn't with all that bickering. Can't you see an old engine's trying to get some shut-eye? But before they could answer, they saw Mr. Percival riding his bike. Engines, I just received word from Sir Topham Hatt that the nuclear power plant has exploded. I need all engines to take cover in their sheds immediately. The engines did not hesitate to do so, and they hid in their sheds. Duncan was still cross. Ugh, you're all a bunch of scaredy engines. We live up in the mountains, so even if the power plant exploded, the mountains would protect us from the impact. I wouldn't be so sure about that, Duncan. We look quite open. Unfortunately, Duncan was wrong. The impact hit hard all over the narrow gauge railway. The engines were terrified and didn't dare leave the shed. Don't worry, guys, said Rheneas in a cheerful voice. I'm sure this will pass soon. But as the hours passed, it only got worse. Ugh, to hell with this. I'm getting out of here. No, Duncan, wait. It's not safe. Neither is staying here. I'm out. And Duncan raced off. As Duncan raced along the countryside, he didn't get very far. Ugh, I don't feel too well. But when he tried to blow his whistle, it sounded deformed. Oh no, what's happening to me? But by the time he realized what was going on, it was too late. Meanwhile, the other engines remained in their sheds. Gee, I hope Duncan's all right. Rusty, if you're so concerned about Duncan, then why don't you go out and look for him? I'm not going out there. You go out there. Okay, I'll go if Peter Sam goes. Don't look at me. I'm not going out there. Guys, that's enough. I'll go out there. No way, youngster. This is a job for a more experienced engine. Youngster? I'm older than you. Yeah, by 5 years. Rheneas, who was just quietly listening to the conversation, was losing his patience. He then blew a loud whistle to get everyone's attention. The other engines stopped to look at Rheneas. I'll go out and look for Duncan. But Rheneas, you're like a brother to me. It's too dangerous. Duncan is our friend. And besides, I know this railway like the back of my buffers. All right, Rheneas, but be careful. And without another word, Rheneas puffed away. I hope Rheneas can find Duncan in time. Rheneas searched high and low for Duncan. He whistled, hoping to hear Duncan, but there was no reply. Then he heard Duncan's whistle, though it sounded a little off. He ventured a little closer, but what he saw next nearly made him jump off the rails. In the distance, he saw what looked like Duncan, except different. Rheneas whistled in terror and he puffed quickly away. When he got back to the sheds, Rheneas told the others what happened. The engines were horrified. And we all have to get out of here right now before the radiation mutates any of us. Are you mad? There's no way I'm leaving my shed. Besides, the sheds are much safer. Well, if we don't get out of here, they won't be for very much longer. Then they all heard a deformed whistle. Duncan's here. Everybody, we need to leave this area now. Well, you didn't have to tell the other engines twice. They raced out of there. All except Sir Handel, who refused to leave his shed. Sir Handel, didn't you hear Rheneas? We need to go now. Well, I'm not leaving my shed. Have fun getting burned. And as if to prove a point, Sir Handel put his brakes on. Come on, Skarloey. We have to leave now. Skarloey was upset that he couldn't save Sir Handel, but he knew Duke was right. When the others left, it wasn't long before Duncan caught up with Sir Handel. The mutated Duncan closed in on Sir Handel, and the little blue engine was done for. Meanwhile, the other engines were trying to escape the railway as fast as they could. They stopped inside of a tunnel to catch their breath. Guys, are we safe in this tunnel? I don't know, Peter Sam. I really don't know. Hours passed, and soon it was nightfall. The little engine still remained in the tunnel and didn't dare move. How much longer do we have to stay in this tunnel? Well, if we stay here any longer, Duncan and Sir Handel will catch up to us. We need to get out of here now. Well, if we make a run for it through the other side of the tunnel, we'll make it out of Sodor by morning. But Duke, that's too risky. The only way we could get to Brendam Docks is if a standard gauge engine takes us there. I agree with Skarloey. Even if there were narrow gauge tracks leading to Brendam Docks, how are we supposed to get there without getting detected by any other mutants? Well, risky or not, it's our only chance of escaping from Sodor. Then it's settled. We need to flag down the nearest standard gauge engine that passes. The engines didn't have to wait long, for they heard a normal whistle. The little engines peeked out of the tunnel to investigate and saw Duck puffing past the tunnel with a few flatbeds. Rheneas let out a whistle to flag Duck down and explained everything. I was just taking Mike, Rex, and Bert over there. Hop in. And the narrow gauge engines were loaded onto the flatbeds by the breakdown train on the back of Duck's train. And when the engines were loaded in, Duck set off. When they got to the docks, Duck proceeded to load the little engines onto the ship that was leaving for the mainland. By then, the sun was rising, signifying a new day. They were just loading the last of the engines in when the breakdown train broke down, with Duke still hanging on. Worse to come, a mutated Gordon spotted them and was racing towards them. Skarloey wanted to go back for Duck and Duke, but was stopped by Rusty. The mutant Gordon caught up with Duck and crashed into him. The impact caused the crane to drop deep into the water. All the other little engines could do was watch in horror as they lost their friends. By this point, Skarloey was getting angry that he kept failing to save his friends. Rheneas comforted him and told him that this was out of their control. And for the rest of the morning and into the afternoon, the little engines set off for the mainland on the ship. When they got to the mainland, they were unloaded from the ship and were still shaking from the events that took place the night before. I can't believe Grandpuff and Falcon are gone. It's all my fault. I should have went back for them. Don't you dare say that, Skarloey. None of this was any of our faults. Rheneas is right. There is nothing we could have done about last night's events. And with that, the engines continued to explore the mainland. It wasn't long before the engines heard a deformed whistle. A mutated Spencer spotted them and raced towards them. Skarloey, Rheneas, and Peter Sam wasted no time getting out of there. Rusty also tried to move, but he couldn't. Guys, I've run out of fuel. You'll have to go without me. No, Rusty, I'm not about to leave another one of my friends behind. Without wasting any time, Skarloey coupled on to Rusty and pulled him along. The little engines raced at speeds they had never gone before, with the mutated Spencer not far behind. Skarloey, you have to let me go. All I'll do is slow you down. Out of the question, Rusty. I already lost Duncan, Sir Handel, and Duke. I'm not about to lose you too. Rusty decided to take matters into his own buffers and uncoupled from Skarloey. Rusty, what are you doing? I'll keep Spencer busy. You guys get out of here. No, Rusty, don't! But it was too late. The mutated Spencer caught up with Rusty, while the other three engines had no choice but to make a run for it. The other three engines escaped, but now all that was left was Peter Sam, Rheneas, and that and assured Skarloey that it was in no way his fault. He also told Skarloey to get some more rest while he went to find coal and water. Rheneas was just mutated. Well, you didn't have to tell Skarloey twice. He rushed out of the shed and filled up with coal and water. They were just about to leave when Peter Sam felt a horrible pain. All poor Skarloey could do was watch in horror as Peter Sam mutated. Once he filled up with coal and water, Skarloey raced away as fast as he could. He had to get away from the mutants so he wouldn't get mutated himself. When he was out of sight, Skarloey stopped to rest. He was now all alone. He was silent for a moment before saying, I don't know what to do. I literally don't know what to do right now. I've lost everything. My home, my friends, my entire life. For the rest of the day, Skarloey wandered around looking for other engines. Soon it was getting dark, and Skarloey needed to find a place to rest. He managed to find a shed with a water tower and a coal hopper, and he was pretty much set for a little while. I hope this'll all end soon, Skarloey said sadly before falling asleep. But as the days turned into months, it only got worse. 1 year later, Skarloey is still traveling around the railway looking for any surviving engines. But so far, no luck. Skarloey continued searching when he heard a deformed whistle. It was Peter Sam, and he was followed by Rheneas and Rusty. The three engines raced towards Skarloey. Terrified, he puffed away as fast as he could. The three mutated engines gained up on the poor engine. But Skarloey was determined to escape. Then he was diverted onto a siding. He applied his brakes, but it was too late. Skarloey derailed in a muddy swamp. Well, looks like this is the end, he said sadly as he closed his eyes tightly. Then the most surprising thing happened. The mutants were sprayed with milk and soap. Skarloey still had his eyes closed, so he couldn't see what was going on. Then the impact of the milk and soap caused a nearby branch to fall on Skarloey. He was now out cold, and the last thing he saw was an engine puffing towards him. When Skarloey had finally woken up, he found himself on a flatbed. He saw an engine pulling the flatbed and immediately panicked. Whoa, hey, Skarloey, relax. It's just me. Edward, boy, am I happy to see you. What happened? You were knocked out cold by a branch. It hit you pretty hard. But the good news is, there's a cure for this mutation. Really? What about my friends? Don't worry, Skarloey. Your friends are being rescued. All of them? Well, all except for Duke. We still haven't found him yet. This made Skarloey very sad. But don't worry, I'm sure we'll find Duke soon. He's most likely at the bottom of the ocean at Brendam Docks. Then that's where I'm headed next. And along the way, Edward explained about the cure. When they got to the repair yard, Skarloey was repaired. And soon, all the narrow gauge engines were back to normal. That is, except for one. Hey, where's Dick? Yeah, I haven't seen Grandpuff in a while. I hope Edward arrives soon with the news. Soon Edward arrived, but he was looking sad. Oh boy, what's happened? Maybe they found Duke, but it's gonna take a long time to repair him? Everyone, I have some very sad news. Very sad? Yeah, not looking too good. Did you find him? Oh, we found him all right, but it's going to take a very long time for him to be back in service. And there's a possibility that he may not be the same engine again. Skarloey was sad for his friend, but was happy that Duke was alive. I'm just glad almost everything's back to normal on Sodor. Unfortunately, the mutation couldn't cure everyone, but that's another story.